Ethan Cade's shuttle shuddered violently as the asteroid's gravity ripped at its hull. Sparks flew across the cockpit console, and alarms screamed like a chorus of dying machines. He yanked the controls left and right, fighting the pull, but a jagged ridge of black rock stabbed straight through his windshield. The impact tore the craft apart, hurling him into darkness. Pain bloomed across his shoulder, but Ethan forced his eyes open. Smoke curled around him, thick and choking. The shuttle was a wreck, the controls fried. Outside, the moon's surface stretched jagged and barren, a field of obsidian shards under a dim, green-tinted sky. Something moved down there. A flicker, a shadow, almost like a living shape, but nothing Ethan had ever seen. He gritted his teeth, ignoring the burning in his arm. "Gotta check it," he muttered, dragging himself from the wreckage. Each step was agony, his boots scraping against sharp rock. The shadow moved again, closer, and this time he saw it clearly. A massive creature, wings folded, scales glinting with an eerie light. Its body was twisted, battered, and one of its legs was caught under a fallen spire of stone. A low, mournful groan escaped it, a sound so full of pain and despair that it made Ethan's chest tighten. For a heartbeat he froze. Dragons weren't supposed to exist. Not like this. Not here. And yet this one looked almost human in its suffering. Its amber eyes, wide and fearful, locked onto him. They held a depth of intelligence and anguish that hit Ethan like a hammer. He could feel it trembling, and something inside him snapped. Without thinking, he ran. He pressed his hands against the jagged rock, grunting with effort, and lifted. One massive scale cut his palm, blood running warm and sticky over his fingers, but he didn't stop. The dragon let out a hiss, half fear, half warning, yet Ethan ignored it. Slowly, painfully, he pried the stone off its leg. The creature sagged forward, groaning in relief. It was huge, its wings folded like sails of a fallen ship, claws scraping against the rock, but it didn't move away. Instead, it lowered its head, letting Ethan touch its snout. The scales were cold and rough, but alive with subtle energy that made his fingers tingle. He whispered, "It's okay. You're safe, for now." A shiver ran through the dragon, and then, unexpectedly, its scales flickered. Ethan froze. Light pulsed beneath the surface, forming patterns, geometric shapes and symbols, faintly glowing. A tiny holographic map flickered in the air, hovering just above the dragon's shoulder. It showed star systems, routes, and a point moving fast toward the moon. A threat, something coming, and it wasn't friendly. Ethan's mind raced. He had no weapons, barely had a functioning shuttle, and yet a choice lay clear before him. Run or help this creature and face whatever was coming. He clenched his jaw. Humans didn't back down from impossible odds. "Okay," he muttered, testing the dragon's reaction. It blinked at him, amber eyes softening. He laid a hand on its massive shoulder and murmured, "We do this together." The dragon's tail flicked, knocking loose another shard of rock. Sparks flew from a nearby metal beam, and a small fire ignited near the wreckage. Ethan grabbed a piece of the shuttle hull, using it to shield the dragon. He felt the heat scorch his arm, but the creature made no sound of protest, only a low rumbling vibration in its throat that seemed almost grateful. Then came the first sign that they weren't alone. A sharp, metallic clang echoed across the ridge. Ethan's head snapped toward the sound. A patrol drone, sleek and silver, scanning the horizon. Its single red eye locked on them. The dragon growled low, a deep vibration that made the ground tremble under Ethan's boots. He didn't hesitate. "Run!" he shouted and vaulted onto the dragon's back. It rose slowly at first, testing its injured wings, then leaped into the air with a roar that shook the jagged cliffs. Ethan clung to its scaled neck as the drone opened fire, beams scorching the rock where they had just stood. Sparks ricocheted around them, missing by inches. As they rose higher, Ethan glimpsed something strange, hundreds of claw marks etched into the stone below, symbols of some forgotten war. The dragon hissed, circling sharply to avoid a falling shard, and in that instant Ethan realized, this was no ordinary creature. It had been exiled here, punished or hunted for reasons he didn't yet understand. And that glowing map, it wasn't just showing the threat approaching them. It was calling him into something much larger. The wind tore at his jacket, the adrenaline pulsing through his veins, and he realized one thing with terrifying clarity. Saving this dragon was only the beginning. Whoever, or whatever, was coming next would change everything. Then, in a sudden blinding flash, a second dragon appeared above them. Larger, scarred, wings tattered, eyes burning with fury. It dove toward them with a scream that split the sky. The first dragon shrieked back, its roar cutting through Ethan's own panic. And for the first time Ethan understood the real danger. He wasn't just fighting to survive. He had just entered a war among dragons, and somehow, a human had been thrown right into the center of it. Ethan barely had time to register the second dragon before it slammed toward them, wings slicing through the thin green-tinted air like razors. The first dragon beneath him let out a deafening roar, twisting in midair. Ethan clung to its scaled neck, knuckles white, stomach twisting as the wind whipped his hair into his eyes. The second dragon circled, and he could see the malice in its amber-red eyes. It wasn't just hunting, they were enemies. "Hold on," he shouted, though he wasn't sure the dragon understood. Its wings faltered slightly, injury made every flap a struggle. Ethan reached for the glowing ridges along its back, pressing gently to soothe the creature. The map pulses flickered in response, now brighter, faster, as if warning them. Danger was closing in, and it wasn't just above, they weren't alone. A burst of light flashed below. Small, metallic drones appeared, hovering in formation, their weapons locking onto them. Ethan felt the first thrill of fear claw at his chest. His shuttle was destroyed. No backup. No reinforcements. Only him and this wounded dragon, flying against odds he didn't fully understand. He leaned closer to the dragon's ear, speaking as if it could understand every word. "We can't let them trap us. Think fast. We move together or we die." The dragon hissed, low and tense, wings adjusting, and for a moment Ethan felt a flicker of hope. It was listening. He scanned the jagged landscape below. A cluster of tall, broken spires jutted from the ground. If they could reach them, maybe the drone sensors would be blocked, buying precious seconds. "To the spires, hold on," he yelled. The dragon twisted sharply, nearly throwing him off as they banked hard, scraping close to the rock faces. Drones fired, plasma bolts cracking off stone, sending shards spraying past them. Ethan ducked instinctively, but a hot fragment grazed his arm, burning through his jacket. Pain shot up his shoulder, and he gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay upright. One of the drones swooped lower, trying to intercept. Ethan grabbed a piece of the shuttle hull that had survived the crash and swung it like a bat, catching the drone's sensor. Sparks showered down as it faltered, giving them just enough room to slip between two spires. The first micro-payoff of the fight, proof that human cleverness could tip the balance even against alien tech. But the second dragon wasn't giving up. It dove from above again, wings spread wide, talons reaching. Ethan realized it wasn't just hunting the first dragon, it was hunting him too. His pulse raced. He reached instinctively toward the glowing map on the first dragon's shoulder. He didn't know why he tried, but the moment his fingers brushed the surface, the holographic lines shifted, forming a new path, an escape route etched in soft blue light, weaving through the spires like a tunnel. The first dragon followed it instantly, banking hard, twisting and dodging with a grace Ethan could never match. Yet every maneuver was agony for the creature, its wings strained, bleeding in patches along the edges. Ethan's stomach churned as he whispered encouragement, pressing his cheek to the rough, vibrating scales. "You can do this. We survived together. You have to." The chasing dragon shrieked, frustrated, circling again. Then something unexpected happened. The first dragon released a sudden, ear-splitting roar, not of fear but of power. The second dragon faltered mid-dive. Ethan realized, the exiled dragon wasn't just defending itself, it was calling, summoning something. And within moments, more shapes appeared in the sky, smaller dragons glinting in the pale green light, circling in formation behind the second. Ethan's heart leapt. The first dragon wasn't alone. These were its kin, or at least creatures that answered its call. And for the first time he understood. His courage, his decision to free this dragon, was beginning to matter on a scale he hadn't imagined. But there was no time to celebrate. The patrol drones had regrouped, now forming a tight net below the spires. Plasma streaked past, some bolts grazing the dragon's wings. Ethan shouted, "Dive!" through the canyon, and the dragon obeyed, slipping into a narrow crevice between two massive rock faces. The drones hesitated, too wide to fit, too fast to target accurately. Inside the canyon the air shifted, filled with a strange, humming energy. The dragon shivered, wings brushing against the glowing mineral walls. Ethan noticed the walls were etched with strange marks, almost like clawed symbols, and he realized, this was a place the dragons had used long ago. Exiles or not, it was their refuge. The first payoff moment hit. They had lost the drones for now, and the exiled dragon's kin were circling above, watching. The creature under him nudged closer, a soft rumble vibrating through its chest, a sound Ethan took as trust. He pressed a hand to its neck. "We're not alone." We can do this. But the relief was short-lived. A sudden, deep vibration shook the canyon. The glowing map pulsed violently, the path it showed now shifting and splitting. Ethan's stomach dropped as he realized the threat wasn't just the drones or the rival dragon. It was something coming faster, bigger, and far more dangerous. From above, the sky darkened in an unnatural way. Shadows twisted across the canyon walls. And then he heard it, a low, resonant growl that made the rock beneath them tremble. The first dragon's eyes widened in terror. Ethan held tight. Whatever it was not a single creature, and it was closing in fast. He swallowed hard, gripping the scales, heart hammering. We survived the crash, we survived the drones, but this is something else. The dragon huffed, wings quivering, ready to leap again. Ethan's jaw set. Humans didn't give up. He had no idea what they were about to face, but he knew one thing with total certainty. He would not abandon this creature. And then, through the shadows, something massive moved just above the canyon rim, blocking the dim green light, and a sound unlike any other echoed down to them. A scream filled with fury, hunger, and intelligence. The kind of scream that promised this was only the beginning. The wind tore at Ethan's jacket as he clung to the dragon's scaly back, muscles screaming with every beat of its wings. The canyon walls narrowed, forcing them into a tight, twisting path. Above, the massive shadow moved with terrifying precision. Ethan squinted, heart hammering. It wasn't a single dragon. Not a ship. Not a drone. Something alive. Something enormous. The exiled dragon hissed, a low vibration that echoed in Ethan's chest. Its wings strained painfully, but it twisted and dodged instinctively, circling over the canyon floor where shadows danced like predators. Ethan's pulse raced. Every movement mattered. One mistake and they would be crushed, impaled, or burned alive. Ahead, the canyon opened into a wide basin, glowing faintly with green crystalline formations. Ethan glimpsed movement among the crystals. Small, lithe figures flitted in the shadows. Other dragons, their scales faintly iridescent. But these dragons weren't like the exiled one. Their wings were sharp, angular, their eyes wary and alert. The exiled dragon faltered mid-air, then roared, sending a tremor through the basin. Ethan felt the vibration as a pulse through his bones. Something was calling. The other dragons froze, ears tilted, wings bracing. And then one of them, a young dragon with golden streaks along its scales, stepped forward and bowed its head. The exiled dragon hissed softly, its tail flicking, signaling recognition. Ethan's breath caught. They weren't enemies, they were allies. Or maybe, kin. But there was no time to process. The massive shadow overhead descended rapidly, revealing itself. A colossal hunter-dragon hybrid, armored with metallic plating fused into its scales, eyes glowing red. Its claws were tipped with blades of unknown alloy. Ethan realized in horror that it wasn't here to hunt a single dragon. It was here to enslave. And now he was directly in its path. "Hold on," he whispered, gripping the dragon's neck. He had no weapons, barely enough strength to hold on. But humans didn't freeze. They acted. He scanned the basin. Among the crystals, a network of jagged formations formed natural barriers, and some of the dragonkin were slipping through narrow openings, invisible to the hybrid sensors. Ethan leaned forward, pressing his palm against the glowing map on the exiled dragon's shoulder. The symbols shifted, forming a pattern he could almost understand, a path weaving between crystals, narrow enough to hide them. He didn't know if it would work, but it was all they had. The hybrid lunged, metallic claws raking the ground, sparks showering as it struck crystals. Ethan felt the wind tear past him as the exiled dragon twisted sharply, dodging death by inches. Behind them, the other dragons scattered through the crystal labyrinth, some pausing to watch, hesitant. Ethan realized something. The dragons didn't fully trust him yet. They were waiting, watching, testing. He forced his fear aside. "We can do this," he muttered. "Together." The exiled dragon roared, hurling itself through the first gap in the crystals. Ethan held tight, feeling the surge of energy under his hands as the creature pushed its wings harder, scales scraping against jagged stone. Sparks flew, a bolt from the hybrid's eye narrowly missing them. Mid-basin, the exiled dragon suddenly stumbled. Ethan's stomach lurched. One wing had clipped a crystal. Pain flashed in the dragon's amber eyes. He pressed his hands harder against its scales. "Don't falter. Not now." The dragon's roar was low, almost pleading. Ethan realized it wasn't just exhaustion, it was doubt, fear that it wasn't strong enough. He made a decision. "Listen to me. You're not alone. They're behind us, yes, but you're faster. Smarter. You survived exile. You survived hunters. You can survive this. The dragon stiffened, then surged forward, following the path the map displayed. Crystals snapped under its claws as it maneuvered through narrow gaps, dodging the hybrid strikes. Suddenly, a second hybrid appeared from a side canyon, its massive body blocking their escape. Ethan's pulse hammered. Two of these creatures, and the exiled dragon's strength was waning. He needed a solution. Quickly he scanned the basin. One crystal formation glimmered more brightly than the others. A natural amplifier of energy, perhaps, left over from some ancient dragon magic. "Take us there," he shouted. The exiled dragon angled sharply, wings flaring, and propelled itself toward the glowing formation. Sparks erupted from its tail as it scraped the jagged stone, narrowly avoiding another hybrid strike. Ethan leaned forward, heart racing. If they reached the formation, maybe they could turn the tide, but one wrong move would mean death. As they neared, the exiled dragon let out a shuddering roar. Ethan realized the pulse wasn't just physical, it was telepathic, a signal. Other dragons in the basin responded, their wings flaring as they formed a protective barrier around the exiled dragon. A micro payoff, the first sign that trust was forming, that the humans' courage had begun to inspire the creatures. But the hybrids didn't hesitate. One lunged directly at them, claws extended. Ethan grabbed a shard of broken crystal and pressed it against the dragon's scales. Energy surged through the creature, and in a blinding flash, it shot forward, dodging the hybrid. The pulse of the formation amplified the dragon's strength, giving it the edge it needed. Ethan's stomach twisted with adrenaline, but even as the hybrid faltered, another shadow passed overhead. Larger, faster, more terrifying than the hybrids. And then he saw it, a massive fleet of metallic ships hovering above the basin, engines glowing, scanning for the dragons. The realization hit him like a blow. This was only the beginning. The exiled dragon, the hybrids, the fleet, they were part of something far larger. And he, a single human, had just stepped into a war that spanned the stars. The dragon beneath him shuddered, muscles straining, wings trembling. Ethan pressed close, whispering, "We survive. Together. No matter what comes next." The pulse from the glowing map shifted again, pointing toward a hidden exit from the basin, a possible sanctuary, but also deeper into unknown danger. Ethan gritted his teeth, feeling the weight of every choice, every second. He had saved this dragon once, and now it was saving him. But survival wouldn't be enough. If he wanted to protect it, if he wanted to earn the trust of its kin, he would need to act faster, think smarter, and face threats no human had ever survived before. And somewhere above, the fleet waited, silent, hungry, and vast. Ethan's heart pounded as the exiled dragon veered toward the hidden exit the glowing map had revealed. The basin stretched wide below them, jagged crystals glittering like teeth. The hybrids circled relentlessly, claws and blades glinting, engines of the alien fleet humming above like a swarm of predators. He gritted his teeth, every nerve alive. There was no second chance. If they failed, both he and the dragons would die. "Hold on," he shouted, pressing his body flat against the dragon's neck. The creature hissed, muscles straining, wings quivering as it angled sharply to avoid another hybrid strike. Ethan could feel the pain radiating from its injured wing. He reached instinctively for the glowing map embedded in its scales. The symbols flickered, pulsing faster, an urgent warning. A narrow path wove through the crystal canyon, twisting like a razor-edged thread between danger and death. "Follow the path," Ethan urged, leaning into the dragon's movement. The exiled dragon obeyed, twisting sharply through the gaps, scales scraping against stone, sparks flying with every misstep. The hybrids lunged, but the dragon's newfound speed, fueled by the map's pulse, allowed them to dodge, narrowly escaping. Ethan's fingers burned as he pressed against the map, feeling the energy surge into the dragon, a strange fusion of alien tech and natural power. Below, the younger dragons that had rallied around the exiled one began to engage the hybrids, circling them, diving in to harry their movements. Ethan realized the power of trust. The dragons were listening, responding to his courage and guidance. Even creatures that had once feared humans now fought at his side. His chest swelled, not with pride but determination. He would not fail them. Then the fleet above shifted. Massive silhouettes blocked the faint light, engines flaring as they closed in. Ethan's stomach twisted. They weren't here for reconnaissance. They were here to obliterate. The hybrids were a vanguard. The fleet's arrival meant the full weight of this alien force was about to descend. "Brace yourself," he shouted. The exiled dragon lunged, weaving between crystalline spires, dodging beams of energy fired by drones above. One bolt hit a wingtip, and Ethan felt the vibration through his hands as a spike of pain shot through the creature. He gritted his teeth and pressed harder against its scales. Not today. You're not giving up. We survive. The dragon roared, sending a pulse through the canyon that scattered smaller rocks and even forced the hybrids to retreat momentarily. Ethan scanned for options. Ahead, the canyon opened into a plateau dotted with jagged monoliths of glowing crystal, tall enough to hide from the fleet but narrow enough that only dragons could navigate. If they reached it, they might buy a few precious moments. He leaned forward, whispering, through the monoliths, fast and steady. No mistakes. The exiled dragon surged, wings flaring. Ethan's stomach lurched with every twist, every scrape against stone. Behind them, a hybrid lunged, claws extended. Ethan grabbed a shard of crystal and jabbed upward, not to kill, but to startle. Sparks flew, and the hybrid veered away just enough for them to slip through the narrow gap. Mini payoff, a small victory but enough to fuel hope. Then came the largest threat yet. A colossal hybrid, the size of a small building, descended from above, massive wings folding back as it dove straight for them. Ethan's vision widened. Its red eyes locked onto him and he realized it wasn't targeting the dragon, it was targeting him. He gritted his teeth, pressed his face to the dragon's neck and whispered, "I'm human. I fight. We survive together." The dragon shuddered, muscles tensing, then twisted sharply. Ethan felt every bone in his body jolt. They barely avoided the strike. But as they veered, the dragon's tail smashed against a jagged monolith, sending shards flying. Ethan ducked instinctively, but a piece of crystal scraped his shoulder. Pain bloomed, sharp and hot, but he gritted his teeth, keeping focus. Above, the fleet's engines flared in response and Ethan realized they were being herded, funneled into the canyon. There was no escape in the open. Only one option remained, strike and strike now. He looked at the glowing map. It pulsed, highlighting the monoliths in blue. Energy surged into the dragon. The creature roared again, a shuddering, defiant cry that echoed through the canyon. Ethan pressed his hands harder to its scales, guiding, urging. "Now," he shouted. The dragon dove through the tightest gap, wings folding, scraping past the crystal edges. The hybrids followed, crashing into monoliths, scattering shards. Ethan felt a rush of triumph and relief, but only briefly. Behind them, another massive shadow emerged. More hybrids, bigger than any before, and the fleet above had begun to deploy drones en masse. Ethan's mind raced. The exiled dragon faltered, struggling under the sudden weight of fatigue. He leaned down, whispering, "You're stronger than they think. Faster. Smarter. You survive because you refuse to die." The dragon responded, muscles tensing, eyes burning amber, and surged forward, cutting through the hybrid's ranks with precision. The smaller dragons that had followed began to attack in coordinated maneuvers. Ethan realized the first human victory had inspired the exiled dragon's kin. Trust, courage, and leadership were forming a bond stronger than any metal or weapon. HFY. Humanity shining through in the most impossible odds. Then the largest hybrid lunged again, claws extended, targeting Ethan directly. Time slowed. His hand shot to the dragon's neck, pressing against the map. A pulse of energy surged through the dragon, and it twisted midair, narrowly avoiding the strike. Sparks and fragments flew. Ethan gasped. He realized then with clarity and awe that he had earned the dragon's trust, but this war was only beginning. From above, the fleet began to descend further, shadows stretching across the canyon, engines humming like an approaching storm. Ethan's chest tightened. The exiled dragon roared, responding to his fear, his courage, his insistence on survival. "We've made it this far," he whispered. "But the fight isn't over. Not by a long shot." The map pulsed again, brighter, faster, another route forming. And Ethan realized, they had survived the climax, but the true challenge, the fleet, the hybrids, and whatever force controlled them, was still waiting above. The exiled dragon shuddered as it touched down on the plateau, wings trembling from exhaustion. Ethan slid from its back, gasping, his muscles screaming from the relentless flight. His jacket was torn, blood seeping from the scrape across his shoulder, and sweat coated his brow. Yet for the first time in hours he allowed himself a moment to breathe. They had survived the hybrids. They had survived the canyon. For now the plateau was theirs. Around them the smaller dragons landed, circling warily. Their scales glinted in the greenish light, eyes still wary but less hostile. Ethan took a careful step forward, hands raised slightly, showing no threat. The exiled dragon lowered its head, nudging him gently with its snout. A soft, vibrating hum emanated from its chest, a sound Ethan had learned to read as trust, even gratitude. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it." The words felt heavy, filled with relief, awe, and exhaustion. The dragons looked at him with curiosity, no longer just suspicion. Some even stepped closer, wings folding, eyes shining as though measuring his worth. A human. One human, and yet he had guided them, protected them, and now, somehow, led them through impossible odds. Ethan knelt beside the exiled dragon, running his hands along the injured wing. The glowing map pulsed faintly, projecting new lines that pointed toward a distant ridge. He studied it carefully. It wasn't just a path, it was a warning. Something bigger was coming, something that the hybrids and the fleet were merely precursors of. And yet, for the first time, he felt a flicker of hope. He wasn't alone. Not anymore. He straightened, glancing at the smaller dragons. "You've trusted me," he said, voice firm. "And now I'll fight for you. I'll lead you. Together we survive. Together we fight." The exiled dragon let out a long, low roar, wings rising in a gesture that seemed almost ceremonial. Ethan's pulse quickened. He realized what this meant. He had earned their allegiance. He wasn't just a passenger, a survivor, he was their commander, their protector. Then came the first real test. From the ridge above, a flicker of light, a scout ship from the alien fleet, appeared, scanning the plateau. Ethan's jaw tightened. The hybrids had been dangerous, but the fleet could obliterate them all. The exiled dragon's scales pulsed nervously, wings flexing in preparation. He stepped forward, hands raised, meeting the dragon's eyes. "We can't run forever," he muttered. "But we can fight smart. We can survive this." He scanned the plateau. The crystals here weren't just natural formations. They were conduits, amplifying energy pulses. He realized something brilliant and terrifying at once. If they could use the crystals to their advantage, the dragons could fight beyond their natural strength. And he, a human, could guide them. The exiled dragon shifted, wings brushing his shoulders. Ethan pressed his hand to its neck, speaking softly. "We start with them, then we plan for the fleet. You trust me, right?" The dragon hissed, then lowered its head slightly, an unmistakable nod. Ethan's heart leapt. Trust had been earned through courage, not domination. That was humanity at its finest. HFY in action. He turned to the smaller dragons, gesturing. "Formation." His voice carried over the plateau. To his astonishment, they responded, spreading wings, aligning behind the exiled dragon, ready for his command. Ethan felt a surge of pride. Every micro-decision, every risk he had taken had led to this moment. Humans could shine even among beings stronger, faster, older. Then the scout ship fired. A laser streaked across the plateau. The exiled dragon hissed, and the smaller dragons dove into defensive maneuvers. Ethan, still on the ground, pulled a shard of crystal from the terrain, holding it out instinctively. Energy surged from the crystalline monolith, pulsing through the dragons as they responded with precise, coordinated movements. Mini payoff, the first counterstrike had worked. They weren't just surviving, they were fighting strategically. As the dust settled, Ethan surveyed the battlefield. The hybrids were destroyed, scattered, and the fleet had momentarily retreated to regroup. The dragons looked at him, eyes wide, alert, and, amazingly, respectful. A human had led them to victory. Not with brute force, but with courage, intelligence, and compassion. He had proven that humanity could inspire even legendary creatures to follow, to fight together. He exhaled, shoulders slumping. For the first time, he allowed himself to feel the weight of the journey. The exiled dragon nudged him again, a soft rumble vibrating through its chest. Ethan smiled faintly. "We've earned this moment," he said. "But it's only the beginning." His eyes flicked to the holographic map, which pulsed once more. A new set of symbols appeared, distant star systems, points of energy, and an ominous mass moving toward them. The fleet had retreated, yes, but something larger, something older, was awakening. Ethan's pulse quickened. He realized the story wasn't over. Survival was temporary. Strategy, leadership, and courage would be tested again. He turned to the dragons, hands resting on the exiled one's shoulder. "We fight together. We survive together. And whatever comes next, we face it as one." The dragon's eyes shone amber, a reflection of fire, loyalty, and trust. Ethan Cade, a human, had forged an alliance that no fleet, no hybrid could break. Above, the green-tinted sky pulsed faintly with the fleet's distant energy. Ethan's mind raced with possibilities, plans, and strategies. The adventure was far from over. The map's symbols hinted at new worlds, new dragons, and challenges that no human had ever faced before. And yet he felt ready. He had survived impossible odds before, he would survive again. The exiled dragon lowered its head, nudging him gently as if acknowledging the future battles to come. Ethan grinned, blood and sweat streaked across his face. "Then let's go," he whispered. "Let's show them what humans can do." And in the distance, through the glimmering crystals and canyon shadows, a new fleet of shapes began to form, larger, faster, and far more dangerous than anything they had faced. The pulse of the map flared violently, hinting at mysteries yet to come. Ethan's eyes narrowed with determination.